It's going to be awesome to see what goes on here as we move forward. And yeah, Probe against Kelazhur there. Sorry, I was getting nice and confused saying Skillis. But yeah, Kelazhur is a guy who has got a knack for RTS games and picking things up and doing pretty well here, there, and everywhere. So, of course, we will be starting on Broken Crown once again. And then it is going to be loser's pick from there. I think it's going to be just very exciting to see. We didn't get to see Probe really super duper challenged in the first series. Now we're going to see if he's going to have more of a challenge going into this one.
No, absolutely. Like, Probe was very good about getting things going. I liked his build as well, going for that early Ethereum, getting that tech upgrade for those scouts, and just having a good 6 or so, just being on the map, being a nuisance, getting the creep camps that you want for resources, primarily, but then using them later just for a swift attack. Definitely getting a lot of damage done. And spawning over the bottom left-hand side, your Australian brethren, it is Probe.
Heck yeah. And in the top right, we've got Kelazhur, of course. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what happens, man. This is interesting because Probe's already changing it up. He's going expansion first. You can tell because he doesn't have anyone on Ethereum just yet. So he's just going to do a single dog to scout. You know, you can call this harassment. And it is. He doesn't really care about losing hit points. Normally, you don't want to be too crazy with the dog. But this is, of course, Broken Crown. You've got flowers to go heal on the map. So just wasting mining time, being a nuisance. And, of course, annoying your opponent as much as possible. Now, Kelazhur has not gone for an Iron Vault. He's just gone for one Conclave. And that is interesting. So it feels to me like he's probably just going to use a few gaunts defensively and try to get a quick expand up of his own. Maybe follow that up with a quick third. We might have a proper macro game on our hands.
Absolutely. A few units are moving out here. So we got a little bit of Ethereum here, right? With these little fellas. And now he's moving out just to maybe confirm that he can get his natural down.
Yeah, the dog block is so frustrating if you don't escort it down. So very common to do this. I do feel like at some point we might have guys like hide the imp down there and then the dog comes in to scout. It's like, oh wait, he doesn't have any buildings, and they run back to the expansion and like the shrine has just barely got down in time. But because the dog has a big vision ability as well, no one really does that. They always kind of, okay, get out either a brute or two or a couple of gaunts, move them down, escort your imp down to the expansion and get it started. But I think Probe feels really happy seeing that because he's like, well, you're stuck defensive and I've already got my expansion up. I speed built it. I'm just now finishing my barracks. I've got a nice momentum advantage. So really well done by Probe to do that. And of course, now we have the second building coming in there and the meat farm following that up. Of course, remember, each time you build a building, it consumes an imp. So there's like a nice little balancing act you can do as an Infernal player of like trying to delay that meat farm as long as possible. And you just keep building buildings to kind of unsupply block yourself.
Yeah, kind of interesting to see how these players are utilizing like how many workers to put where. Like having 10 workers on the Luminite here early on. The most efficient that you can get, even though 12 will probably up it a little bit. It's one of those things like in StarCraft, right? For a long time, we just put as many guys on minerals as we could, but then it was like, okay, like 2 per patch, maybe 3 on certain patches will be the most efficient, but Kelazhur going for the 10 there, filling up the Ethereum afterwards, and here, just like you said, a few gaunts here to just make sure that he's not going to take any cheeky damage, and moving over, transferring these workers to this base as well. A far different Infernal game here from Kelazhur compared to Dark.
Oh, and he's going to go take his trees down by the looks of it to the right. So he's going to open up the path to the kind of triangular third base. So he's going to be all defending like high ground ramps. Also gives him a path to maybe sneak out without the dog seeing him to take the speed camp on the right side of the map. So that quick third for Kelazhur, very just conservative macro play for him. Those gaunts, no match for a big pack of dogs or lances or anything like that on the map, but I think he's pretty sure from the fact that he's only seen one dog where he can just infer without even scouting that Probe has also fast expanded. So he sneaked him out, takes a resource camp on the right side, does Kelazhur, and then he just pulls back. Very, very conservative and chilled out play.
Yeah, absolutely. So from this point on, is this a far more normal Infernal opening as opposed to what Dark did, and what is the follow-up? What are we most likely going to see from Kelazhur here?
It's going to be an interesting choice because he spots the hangar, and that immediately tells him don't bother building a Doombringer. If he was planning to do a fast Gaunt drop, which everyone does, I think he's going to change his mind now because he's like, well, you're going to build Hornets and shoot that down, so let's not even bother. And I think he's going to be happy that he's so Gaunt heavy because Gaunts shoot up. And whilst Hornets can be annoying, they're they're going to be vastly outnumbered. Now, Hornets are a great harassment unit, though, because you can always return to hangar with a double speed all the way back to the hangar, and then it automatically heals them up slowly until full life. The problem is you can't control them once they return to hangar until they're fully healed. But look at this, already forcing a Shroud Stone, second one to be built to try and save that imp. And remember, he's also got, because he's tier 2, Probe has the armor. He can activate the 1000 armor shield on that, 10 seconds. Can only use it once every 2 minutes. But that's a really good way of, if your opponent starts shooting, say, a Hornet in the front of your army, you just shield it, shoot down a few gaunts, and then run away before it dies. Probe has to preserve them, though. Think of this like Phoenix harassment as a Protoss player. If you lose a few Phoenix, it's terrible. But if you just keep them all alive, they just keep getting value over time.
I mean, he's forced out a lot of towers from Kelazhur, like a lot of towers. But Kelazhur, not going to be feeling too bad about that. He is on 3 base, like we know about. I'm not entirely sure if Probe knows for sure if there's a 3rd base up. I mean, we've had very different skill levels in this group shown so far. We do see Probe is just scouting over there. It's like, okay, no base over here. And by the looks of his blue units on the map, we'll be looking at the other 3rd spot, but just utilizing this to get some damage done, denying the vision camp of Kelazhur. And yeah.
Hornets were super cracked on a previous build, by the way, but in case anyone's wondering, they've been toned down a bit, so they're pretty well balanced right now.
Oh, he's boosting those buildings as well. Those supply depots can be upgraded just to make sure that they... I think it's 2 things that they have at this point in time. Increasing production speed by 25% while also adding supply to those depots. And that looks like what Probe is doing here. Very, very heavy air-based army from him.
Solar Habitat, 25% like you said. The other one is the Rampart, which is like the defensive shield you can put on a building to give it double, basically plus 200% hit points. Like, it makes it way tankier for a while. So very good abilities. Mass Gaunt into 4th base already for Kelazhur. Really respecting the double Hornet play. The thing is, like, what do you do from here as Probe? You can't stay on Mass Hornet. You're gonna need to get a bunch of Lancers, but Lancers are so good against Gaunts. He might be like happy to just do it. Or maybe he'll try to go into a mech army like Vulcan Medtech, because Vulcans have +1 range in the most recent patch, which means extra splash damage, extra big cone of splash damage, and they're so good against Gaunts and Fiends. So we might see Probe skip adding the infantry entirely and do that. But it does feel kind of weird, because like the Gaunts are just not the best unit in general as a combat unit, but if Shadow Flyers come in, the Scourge type unit, it will destroy Hornets in the previous patch, because it would do full damage in an AoE, where you'd basically blow 2 of them up and you could kill like 8 Hornets. Now it only does 50 damage. It used to do 125. So the Shadow Flyers, the Scourge type things, are just nowhere near as good at dealing with the Hornets, and that's what Probe is looking to abuse. Also, when we get to that point, we don't see any Shadow Flyers yet, but if we get there, he's also going to pop the top bar shield on the front Hornet and absorb those Scourges just before they hit it. So those are some interactions we'll look for later in the game. For now, though, it's just mass Gaunts against mass Hornets. And we do see Kelazhur with an economy advantage, so he's doing pretty all right.
Absolutely. This Hornet number is starting to get really scary, by the way. Like, they can even take out these towers pretty nicely, but I don't know if they want to tango with that many Gaunts all in one go right there, and apparently not. You can see some of them speed boost, fly home, so they can get repaired. Nice play out of Probe so far. Honestly, not too much damage done on either side of things. Kelazhur trying to do some damage with these little fellas here. Might get a little bob for his trouble, and yes, he does.
Yeah, 1 bob, not too bad. It was 5 or 6 Fiends, so maybe not directly cost efficient, but I think it's okay. Most of those Fiends he's basically been getting from creeps. So yeah, I guess it is cost efficient. They're free units, right? So you can't argue with free. Still heavy on the Gaunts, and man, I'm so curious to see what this fight looks like. So Probe did show this double hanger style just the other day. There was a replay versus Parting, which he kind of happily shared around, because he just tried the build for the first time, and I think he didn't think he'd actually be using it in the tournament at all. But now apparently it's powerful enough. He's using it here in the tournament, which does surprise me, but it does shut down any drop play. The first Hornet does die there, so a slight mistake for Probe, you could say, but he's killed so many of these shrines. Remember, each one you're killing a worker, plus the 50 Luminite for the shrine. Sorry, not shrine, Shroud Stone, I should say. Shrine is actually their command center, but he's already got good value out of it, and it looks like a Lancer transition on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, he is going for those Lancers, which we've already seen used to great effect by Clem in a previous series as well, right? Like, they are strong, when they take damage, they get faster, they seemingly deal more damage as well, get right on top of things. And Gaunts, they are fairly flimsy. Yes, they're range, but if you can get on top of them with some big, bulky boys like Lancers, I feel like Kelazhur needs another unit in this mix.
Yeah, it's definitely not a complete army yet, is it? It's like, well, it can defend these guys, but it can't do much else. And he's kind of very much turtled behind his static defense. And we're seeing this sort of critical mass where the Shroud Stones just go down. 2 of them go down. The Imps have to evacuate. Picking off the Fellhog's not the most effective. That just gives Animus to the other player. Oh, Lance is running on the right. Get another Shroud Stone snipe. Yeah, he's doing pretty good, man. Magmadon's coming out to try and deal with those Lances. But look at that. He returns a bunch of them home to heal. Takes out the Shrine. And what I love about his defense is Probe has always a Bob in a sentry post next to his hangar. The hangar's default healing is pretty slow. It's not very effective. But if you have a Bob there in the healing tower, it actually tends to heal them. Unfortunately, he's a bit too far to the left, so he's out of healing range because they've returned to the left hangar. But normally he has that set up really nicely to speed up his healing.
And there's the Scourge type units there. What was their name again? Doing that suicidal attack?
Shadow Flyers, yeah.
Oh. And I mean, like, the way that Infernals work, you stack up units on buildings. So at one point in time, any unit from a building, it can have charges. So the maximum charge is 3 units, and boom, you can summon 3 of those, like, almost in an instant there. So absolutely catching Probe a little bit off guard there with that attack. And right now, this is like one of the most even games we've had all day.
Yeah, really like very respectful defensive for both players, like just both being more macro focused. There are players who are just fighting for map control all game long, and this is definitely the opposite of that. Big Magmadon count. Now, the Magmadons are quite good, but they're kind of clunky, right? So it's all about getting on top of your opponent's units. Interestingly, Probe is going Vulcans, Medtechs, and Lancers. So he's going to have healing plus Vulcans. If he can get to a critical mass of Vulcans, they are one of the better armies. Watch for those Shadow Flyers. And look for Probe as well. I don't know what server they'll be playing. Kelazhur, of course, lives in the Netherlands. Probably playing on like an American server. Halfway between both of them is what you'd expect. But it's definitely going to be interesting if he can pop shields in time or just pull back and return to hangar before the Shadow Flyers connect. I think Kelazhur probably wants to come in with maybe 10 to 15 Shadow Flyers if the it's such a big amount of Hornets, and if he can split them to come from 2 sides and sandwich them, Probe's going to get caught.
I mean, it's definitely going to be a little bit tricky here. Like, those air units, the Hornets, definitely a pesky little bugger, and that is a respectful number. And oh, nice connection by Kelazhur. You can definitely feel that if Probe was maybe playing with 0 ping, maybe he'd be able to out-micro it and get that snipe going, but those Flyers definitely quite quick. And this ground army isn't so fast, but it's meandering about, getting a little bit of control going on, and so far it doesn't look like it's being bolstered that heavily, like this main little bunch here, but we know Infernal, especially with this kind of, lovely, trampling through this to get onto the speed camp, that will absolutely speed things up for Kelazhur.
We don't see any Weavers yet to deal with these Vulcans. They're also a very tanky front line, so that could be an issue. Oh, he does lose one of his Hornets there. The multiple Shroud Stones doing pretty well. Harassment for Probe, though, has been overall pretty darn effective. Losing the occasional Hornet is not the end of the world. Hellborn are finally out now as the finishing piece of the composition for Kelazhur. Kelazhur finds the Bobs on the double Therium on the south as well. Great catch here for Kelazhur. Getting aggressive. He might try to take the base below that as well.
Oi. And yeah, we got a drop over to the left side as well by the looks of it. Those Trample boys getting some damage done along with the Gaunts as well. Hornets are very quick to clean things up. Lovely bubble on those air units, and oh my goodness.
Oh!
That's a lot of Lancers on these Gaunts, but the Trample boys coming in dealing a lot of damage, but Probe's army deals so much damage.
The Magmadon's doing really good, and the Gaunt's mostly pulled away, and Infest is going to come down on top. Is there enough damage behind this, though, for Kelazhur? Brutes coming in from the north trying to help out. As the Hornets arrive, though, especially with the nanoswarms on those Vulcans, you could see how much damage those Vulcans were tanking. They heal so much life. It's like a rejuvenate from a Druid of the Core in Warcraft. Obviously describing this game through references to all of our other favorite RTSs, but that was a great hold for Probe. And with the Hellborn now getting caught by the Hornets, there is no retreat with this slow army. That is a disaster for Kelazhur.
I mean, it really feels like these Hornets have been MVPs in this game, right? Just right from the get-go. It's very hard to take them out with this much firepower, but they're doing a lot of damage absolutely everywhere. And we're seeing new units in every game here. These Vulcans are very good at just smashing out lots of damage on the ground here. And that medtech being used here to heal all those mech units in one blob. I mean, he switched. Absolute unit comp. He switched, and it's worked out wonders.
One of the Shadow Flyers is still stuck in its charge animation, chasing all the way to the hangar on the other side of the map. That was hilarious. I think it ended up getting all the way to Probe's base. So There is like a funny micro there, which Probe was always trying to do, where he's like recall to hangar with his front guys as the Shadow Flyers get close, and they're just like locked in this chase. The idea being something else Probe has that can shoot up, can hopefully shoot the Shadow Flyer down before they get back to the base and it connects. So pretty nice micro on both sides. The Shadow Flyers, you can really see the effect of that nerf though. And Probe has just used the early Hornets to control the map. He shut down that drop, came back, cleaned up the other army. He's now on the front here, and maybe wants to pull back from that because the Hellborn plus Choke Point, all those meat farms. But he's got he can take these bases to the left, and he can say, come out into the open and meet me there. And there's mass Shroud Stone everywhere, but it's so expensive to build all these Shroud Stones. And I feel like, you know, there's something we know as high-level RTS players. Massing turrets is really good up to Gold League, right? And then beyond that, it starts to have diminishing returns. Static defense can't move, and the Hornets have forced so much static defense from Kelazhur just because that's the only way he could have dealt with it. Blade Dragon comes out, you can just see the numbers advantage for Probe because his whole army is all in one spot and he's overwhelming so nicely.
Yeah, I mean, even that Dragon came out here, but the Hornets are enough to deal with it. And I mean, a lot of units just don't shoot up here. And Probe's army, I mean, jumping in here with the Vulcans as well, that big rocket jump, getting lots of damage done. And Kelazhur, yeah, not long for this game here.
What an ID, by the way, there for Kelazhur. Username 2, legendary ID. I believe Stormgate. I think it uses like your Steam ID or something, but that's just a funny nickname. Love seeing that. Anyways, that was a good game for Probe. Definitely a very different game. And I think we got to see a very big change in the pacing. I do wonder, you know, thinking back on that game, do you go for the Shadow Flyers earlier and try to sandwich the Hornets? It does feel like there's maybe a bit of a limit in terms of what you can do as the Infernal player. Because the Gaunts, it felt like you're stuck moving between your bases, losing Shroud Stones repeatedly. It felt like Probe got ahead, even though he was slower to the thirds and so on. It just took Kelazhur so long to get a fourth base because he was spending all of his money replacing Shroud Stones, running imps around. Maybe the play is still to go for the Shadow Flyers and just get enough of those out early enough.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I saw quite a few players where they were like putting that spire on certain building or certain places, and it would be like as soon as the Hornets came, then you make 3 pop and you deal with it kind of thing. So definitely a bit of building placement could be different as well for Kelazhur, but overall, definitely nice play out of both of them. Like they both got to do what they wanted, both got to really get things going. I think we're going to head into this next map as well, and none of that jagged moor map for this little showing here will be a far more normal map with that big double juicy base in the middle.
Yeah, Secluded Grove will be the next one. The double juicy base, man. I was watching a game the other day where it was just mass Hellborn against mass Atlas fighting over that middle base for like 10 minutes. It may have been one of the silliest games I've ever watched. But Secluded Grove coming in now, and we will be going into game. In the top right, we've got Kelazhur on the Infernal side. And he's opening up once again. Same opening. Just a single conclave to get some Gaunts out.
No, absolutely. Kelazhur spawning over here in the top right, doing that thing that you talked about here. Maybe going to go for a very similar build to game 1. And Probe, I already see on that minimap here, Pig, that there are a couple of little bobs here, getting that Therium. Or just one for the time being, but already a different approach here from Probe in game 2.
Yeah, I think he said with the dog opening you do need 2 dudes on Therium to get it, so he might put another one on there in a moment to get the upgrade. Early Habitat, it could just be unupgraded dogs. I have heard some people are doing that, where they're like, but then in that case, I guess he wouldn't probably want any Therium mining. We'll see exactly what Probe has in store for us. Definitely something a bit more aggressive, though. Won't be as passive of an early game. And why would you go dogs here? Well, you might think a rush is not as strong because it's a big map, but dogs are so fast. The bigger the map, the better, because counterattacks can't hit you as hard. Dogs kind of suck at fighting against brutes defensively. And you've got so many resource camps on this map to pick up. So if you pin them in their base, force a lot of defense, and then you just go clear up all those resource camps, it kind of pays for itself. And I think it's just in general a very good opening for Probe. So he's going to come in, does see the expansion. He was busy, of course, picking up the resource drops up to this point on this map. And managed to get like a few little, it's a tiny bit of Luminite and Therium from those. That's why you only need 1 worker on the Therium. I've answered my own question, Ben. I was like, oh, don't you need 2 for the upgrade? No, it's fine. You just pick up the bonuses on this map.
No, I mean, Probe's definitely got a lot of this stuff ironed out by the looks of it. And Gaunts are going to be the unit of choice. Now, they're light, correct me if I'm wrong, so the Scouts won't be too terrible against those. And, I mean, Probe's been very good about being very decisive about what he wants to get done. And Kelazhur being very careful with those gaunts, and rightly so, I feel.
Yeah, it's a wise choice, being super duper careful. Problem is he doesn't have a wall off, I would say, for Kelazhur. Remember what we saw in, I think it was the very first game versus Dark today, we saw like 10 plus imps go down to a 5 dog run by. And I was mentioning how a lot of players have started building their buildings at the ramp and then walling off reactively with an imp on standby, because otherwise the dogs getting in the main is just so deadly. So I definitely think that's something which might hurt Kelazhur in this game, the fact that he doesn't have the setup to build the reactive wall off.
Absolutely, and 6 dogs definitely seems to be a magic number for a lot of these players, and you see this timing from Probe. It's almost exactly when these workers moved on over, and sending 1 scout, he hasn't revealed how many he's got actually, so being a proper little nuisance here, and scouts again, gets to see big scan going on. Those gaunts, get to see how quickly they do fall, and lots of eco damage being done here, but nice little hold by Kelazhur, it's got to be said.
Only 1 imp and 1 gaunt. Only like 1 dog died, so he can pull back and heal, but does mean he's not taking resource camps right now. And actually, like, Kelazhur might be brave enough to move out and try to take something. On this map, you do need to break your Therium patches open, which Kelazhur just did. You see the green dot just appeared on the minimap. That's going to mean that's going to start spawning those out. So if you don't break those, it just sits there, closed up, no Therium spawning, right? And not only does Therium spawn to a certain amount around it on the ground, but if you don't mine it for long enough, it enriches after a certain amount of time, which means you can mine it. I think it's double the speed. It's definitely, it's some ridiculous advantage. So there's actually, that's another reason why going for a heavy Luminite build can be super good, because you go for a heavy Luminite build and then bam, you make up for it by double mining on your Therium later on, and you catch up on all those tech units.
And you see here that Probe is going for that bob inside that sentry gun there, just to get the healing going. And does it not cost you anything besides inactivity time on the bob?
That's right, yeah. It's really efficient, super duper efficient. All repair actually is free in Stormgate right now. It's just the time it costs. It is slower, I find, than, say, StarCraft repair, which cost... In StarCraft, it was like 25% of a unit's original cost to get it from 1 hit point to full hit point repairing. In Stormgate, it's free, but it's the worker repair time that is, of course, the real cost.
Absolutely. And Kelazhur being very quick to add on these Scourge stones, these tower-like things in his bases, and I mean, probably a little bit scared about creeping out on the map, and with the fact that there are still these dogs alive, so kind of like that by him. Obviously, it does cost you a worker each time, but they're very cheap, honestly. I think it's like 25 Luminite or something like that. But yeah, Kelazhur is starting to get good Therium numbers rolling. He's got good Luminite on both bases as well. Probably going to be looking, and as I was just thinking, taking a 3rd base very close to the center of the map here.
That's a really interesting 3rd, actually, because if they go in to attack it, they're kind of trapped in the forest and they can't escape. So it's really scary to push that base, even though it is kind of exposed for Probe. However, I've seen a lot of players start to tear down the trees and actually start to take that one out, as it does look like, are we lagging a little bit in the game is for you as well, Ben?
I definitely see a little bit of running on the spot going on and things like that. So
might have had a little crash there, yeah, or something like that. We'll see what happens. Hashtag beta. That is what goes on sometimes. No worries. Our team will get that production issue sorted out, or that tech issue sorted out in a moment, and we'll get that one fixed for you guys. It is funny because in the replays in general in Stormgate, whenever you pause the replay or things aren't like going on actively,
things are still running on the spot.
They all run on the spot, or if they're attacking, they look like they're attacking. So it always malfunctions in my brain a little bit, where I'm like, what's happening? Are we still playing? And then you're like, oh, no, I paused a replay, or my game kind of froze up, or whatever happens. So it's kind of funny. But we are back in here. It looks like it was just a bit of a hang, and the players have now resumed. So no worries. No harm, no foul, as the dogs are cleaning up the resource camps in the south side. Here comes a big push for Kelazhur, but yeah, not really committing with it, because of course he's taking a 3rd. So as chunky as his army looks, a lot of that is very fragile gaunt. It's dangerous to move all the way across the map with that.
No, absolutely. I mean, it is a slow army as well, isn't it? Like, he's done a good job of just running around, making sure that he's not taking too much damage. In fact, did he just take that out with just those fiends there?
Yeah, it's going to be cool to see what develops from here, because double hanger again. Probe is like, I'm going to do the same thing. But of course, he'd invested in a heavier opening. So I personally would not have expected this. I just assume when I see a dog opening, you're going to be going for, you know, what you expect. It's just Exos, Lancers, Medtechs. Hornet's already denying the Therium mining, and just that lost mining time alone is great. We don't see the shield being used that much by Probe on his Hornets. He's been very, like, conservative with waiting for it, but if he can just stand and fight one Gaunt, there we go, there's that shield we were talking about. Maybe activating it unnecessarily since there's nothing attacking him right now, but he's getting massive damage. All the other Fiends on the map, did they get caught by the dogs? Where are the Gaunts? The dogs are up there in the natural as well. Oh my god, chaos is happening in this game. And it seems like, I think the dogs must have either caught the Gaunts or they're all pinned at the third base. And that is a disaster. Oh, they're all on the drop. That's why he's dropping the base. This is crazy, but the overcharge is so tanky. And with the healing bot there as well, oh my gosh, this is going so well for Probe.
So well, and even that dropship over there on the left side, oh my goodness.
Oh!
Popped open. Those units are left in that wasteland over there. And yeah, I mean, everything went absolutely P-tong here, didn't it? And Probe, he's starting to utilize that big Therium deposit that he opened up a long time ago as well. And Kelazhur, how does he come back from this one?
Wait, what was that Britishism? It went absolutely pear-tong, did you say? What was that?
P-tong. P-tong.
What's that mean? What's that for? I've never heard that.
Well, it means tits up, mate. Absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible.
That one I'm familiar with. Yeah. Pear-shaped tits up are ones I regularly use, but P-tong, I was like, okay, that's a new one.
Yeah, I'll have to look that one up specifically because I remember saying Wano, like Wano, a while ago, and
oh yeah.
Then I found out like nobody knew what I was talking about, and it was a proper only Nottingham slang-esque thing, and I was like, oh my goodness, like I've been saying this for so long, people don't understand me.
That's amazing. Yeah, I always love hearing like just real super localized, regionalized slang. There's always like some real gems that come up there. But lots of buildings going down for Kelazhur right now. So I think he's going to try and go the Shadow Flyers this time rather than relying on the Gaunts, realizing they are so fragile versus the Hornets. And they just don't have the mobility to keep up with them. So I think he's going to go for Shadow Flyers behind this, try and get some production charges. But the Hornets will not be stopped, man.
I tell you what, these Hornets have done not only a good job harassing, but great at denying that drop, right? And get to see some of these Flyers pop out, and they getting some connections going, but the fact they can just go toe-to-toe with these towers. And you say this unit was nerfed, right?
Yeah, dude, it was cracked when it first got buffed in the patch. It was insane. I remember I was like, oh, it's day one. I was like, hey, Probe, what build are we doing, man? And he was like, Hornets. And I was like, come on, man, I'm really new. I'm just starting to like really grind the game and learn builds. And he's like, no, seriously, just build Hornets. And I was like, oh, okay. I got my first rage from a ladder opponent within like 2 games. I was like, oh, okay, this unit's cracked. They hotfixed it within a day, nerfed its bonus to light a bunch. And I think they might have even nerfed it again slightly. But it's still really good just because of the limited anti-air of the Infernal. And now because the Shadow Flyer, which was the thing which really dealt with it well, has been nerfed, we're seeing Probe seems to have very renewed faith in it. I'm not sure if the Shadow Flyer cost off the top of my head, but what we've been seeing so far is Kelazhur's just kind of on the back foot. He's only going in with 2 or 3 at a time, and he's usually trading 2 or 3 Shadow Flyers for 1 Hornet, which I imagine is a positive trade for Probe. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'll check in with you guys later on in the tournament once I have a chance to check in on those numbers.
Oh, it's nice. So you can see that turret being used. So it's got one of these, either a Lancer or an Exo in there, just getting some nice damage. So gets to do that, deal with that run by very efficiently. And lots of Brutes in the mix for Kelazhur over here. Now, Brutes, what are they going to deal with well in this kind of situation? Because so far I'm seeing Lancers, I'm seeing Hornets. So far, Kelazhur's army just looks kind of outmatched and outgunned, if I'm...
Yeah.
But correct me if I'm mistaken.
I mean, in a pitched battle, I think the Brutes do pretty okay against the Lancers. Like, they kind of all just stand and fight. If it's just Lancers versus Brutes, the Lancers kind of hit them, run away, and don't really... They kind of do a bit better. And they definitely get buffed from the damage, but, like, I guess the reason the Lancers perform better is it's all the Gaunt bounces and the little things doing damage buff them so much that the Lancers do get out of control. If it was just Brutes versus Lancers, it would be a bit more fine, but even the Fiends are also going to buff them. Oh, that's huge. Oh, a base and a Shroud Stone. That's so painful. Kelazhur, he needs to go heavy on the Shadow Flyers, man. He's coming down now. Not a very surprising angle with them. Let's see how the micro goes. I don't think Probe has a shield up.
Oh, but he is able to just get on out of there and then repair up back at home very nicely. This base very much towered up by Kelazhur, and I mean, it's been a pretty damn good base for him. I don't think Probe can really do too much about that unless he does massively commit like you talked about earlier. And Kelazhur's army just wandering around the map, getting some good creeping going, but Pro's been good about expanding as well behind it, and he's just been a proper annoying sod, hasn't he, with these Hornets all the time.
Yeah, he's showing, even when, like, it feels like the dogs aren't achieving that much in his early games, but it just feels like he's always in control and he's going first, and he's not really giving the other players a lot of chance to get in control of the match or really handle what's happening. I mean, Probe is just showing that next level over his opponents, and, you know, I was saying to him the other day, I was like, come on, man, these guys have all been at Katowice, you've been grinding this game, you know so much about this game compared to everyone else, you're going to smash. And I think he had a good attitude. He was like, no, man, these guys are so good. Like, the Laser especially so high on the ladder. They're all so gifted. Like, I actually think it's going to be really hard for me to get out of this group. But so far, there hasn't been a crazy amount of competition until this match, where Kelazhur has been putting up a good fight, but it still feels like Probe is just inching ahead with that Hornet harass. And I keep thinking about, like, if Kelazhur can kind of scout him coming, flank him with Shadow Flares from two sides, we could see, you know, 6 Shadow Flyers blow all these Hornets up or something like that. But notice Probe's even pre-splitting them a little bit. Just kind of saying, look, just in case I'm caught off guard. Spriggan's coming in! Wow, mass Spriggan swap! That I was not expecting. Wow.
So what are these units capable of here, Pig?
They are the most underused, unexplored unit in the game. They just don't get used that much. They're kind of like a Mutalisk analog. They do increase damage to targets that they're attacking. That stacks up to like 30-40% damage increase. We could see Shadow Flyers landed a few hits, but no big, like, you know, we really want 4 Shadow Flyers landing in the pack of like 8 Hornets to get the super value. We haven't seen that just yet. I think from what I'd heard, people said Hornets should beat Spriggan's cost for cost. But because Kelazhur kind of exploded into a large number, it looks like he's kind of trying to play Mutalisk, you know, Scourge and say, look, I'm going to use the mobility. Your Hornets will have to move to respond to defend your bases. When you do that, the Scourges, the Shadow Flyers, are going to blow up your air units. Probe's trying to pre-split here.
I think Pro's doing a good job of pre-splitting, and so far, those Spriggans that you talked about, well, looks like there's a reason that people don't really use them. I don't know how pricey they were, but they absolutely, they definitely caught Probe a little bit off guard, but...
Oh, and these Shadow Flyers trickling in as well, so that's, you've really got to come in with, like, all your Shadow Flyers at once. You can't trickle in, or they just get gunned down.
My goodness. Okay, so Probe is kind of back to that army mix they had in Game 1, where he gets Lancers, he gets Hornets out, he went about point A to point B in a very different way, but that army is so powerful. But Kelazhur, he's got some tech in the mix as well. Solid anti-ground mix, like the Tramplers, the Hellborns in the back as well. And Probe just being very careful, even though he just took out that massive air switch going on.
Yeah, the scary thing about Probe is he seems to know how to navigate each stage of the game, which is always, like, it's always the most annoying thing. As an RTS competitor, I'm sure you know this, is like, there's always these guys who are like, they're really good at 1 or 2 things, and you're like, oh, he's very dangerous here, but if I just get to this other part of the game, this player's going to be out of his element. He's not going to know what to do. And Probe hasn't really shown, like, oh, he's really weak in early game, or he's really weak in late game. He kind of just seems to have good experience in all of them. So it's a little bit hard to figure out, you know, if there's any just obvious advantage you can take as Kelazhur.
I like that. He put the bubble there on one unit there, taking a lot of damage, and it was the one getting focused. But Kelazhur retargeted a little bit, and now these flying boys are flying in. Probe making pretty good out of a kind of chaotic situation there. And honestly, yeah, these Hornets absolutely been worth every penny here. They've just been so much value for money.
Yeah, and they lost like 2 there for so much damage, so can't agree with you more, Ben. I don't know, man. Feels like Probe is running around the map, and I definitely feel like Kelazhur's got it, getting that experience that, you know, I've had a lot playing this game when I play against one of these guys who's good at the map control and the pressure, but he's also expanding fast behind it, and you're like, oh, okay, I weathered the storm. I've got a 4th, I should be okay. And you're like, oh, he has a 5th base? Oh, damn, okay, I'll take a 5th. You're like, oh, he's on 7 bases? Oh, this Hornet's killing one of my bases? And you're like, oh my god, it just feels like Probe is everywhere right now. He's got the big Vulcan medtech ball. This is a very scary army. How do you deal with this? Magmadon's struggling to get on top of it. He needs to wait for the Hellborn. Kelazhur forced to attack to a choke point to try and defend his base, but his Hellborn aren't really able to do much. You see, he's trying to pull back to let the Hellborn fight, but look at those heals on the Vulcans. They are tanking so much.
I mean, you can't even see the Hornets in the fight here. They're over to the north doing something else, taking out all the workers, I believe. So even if this fight doesn't go his way, eco-wise, he's doing great. Those Hornets still alive. They're flying back home as well now. The Vulcans dealing lots of damage, and those Hellborns, I mean, every time I've seen them today, they are just not able to get done what they need to get done, which is clear out that Vanguard army, and look how many Vulcans are here alive. And my goodness, what a fight from Probe.
Yeah, you know, this is just great play for Probe, navigating every stage of the game so well, smoothly transitioning. Kelazhur has to tap out there. And I think I just want to reiterate what my impression has been from the Hellborn. People, when it first came out, they were like, terrible unit, not that good. But then I kind of was like, okay, well, let's investigate it. And I really started to come to the conclusion that when you're above 200 supply, 220, 230 supply, you start to get to this point where the Hellborn is actually very effective in big fights. And it's also very effective when it's in an arc defending a choke point. When it's in an arc and they're all shooting, it's great. But because they're so chunky, the Magmadons are so chunky, we're often seeing these Infernal players who are like already back on the back foot. Their army's a bit smaller. And then the Vanguard player kind of gets them out of position. And they're trying to like attack through a choke point and all their stuff stuck behind each other. You really want to be like defending with those guys. And I'm not sure if you want to be doing kind of do some imp drops, you know, do some flame on to hit a worker line, send some other units to counterattack. But you really want to set up that defensive position with the Hellborn as much as possible. And Probe is just so ahead in the positioning and the map control. He's always catching them out of position and having the numbers advantage.